Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music. Our goal here is to get as many people producing music as possible, and the easiest, most accessible way to start making music is on your iOS device. So if you guys do want to help us out with that mission, make sure to smash those likes, subscribe, and share out the show. Now in today's video, we're going to be going through the basics of creating a pop song inside Cubasis 3. We've just recently released yet another free sample pack in our Essentials Pack series, this time focusing on the pop genre. So we thought that this would be a great opportunity to showcase some of those sounds and create a tutorial video showing you how to create a song in that genre. Now, even if you don't actually produce pop songs or want to produce pop songs, there is still plenty of foundational information here to take away from that you can really use to apply to virtually any genre. And finally, to celebrate the release of this new sample pack, we are hosting a brand new free contest with a ton of great prizes, so definitely make sure you stick around to the end of the video to find out how to enter. Alright, now with that intro aside, let's get right into showing you how to create a pop song inside Cubasis 3. Alright, now before we do get started, we did just want to quickly add a disclaimer, again, to let you know that even if you don't produce in this genre, there are still a bunch of fundamental techniques that we will be using that can be applied across a variety of genres. Now we did try to stick with mostly using just stock plugins for this project, but we did actually end up using a few third-party plugins, and we'll make sure to provide the links for those in the description below. Now what we're going to do first is play the song for you, and then after that, begin breaking everything down. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, as you can see, we do have our project pulled up inside Cubasis 3 here, and like we said, before we really get started going into the details of it, we're going to play the song for you. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, hope you guys like that. As you can see, the track isn't super long here. If we take a look all the way at the end, and then go over to the timer here, we can switch from time to bars, from minutes to bars. And if we look at the minutes, we are at 2 minutes and 56 seconds. So not very long here. And the track count here is a little bit misleading. It says around 39 tracks, but remember we do have a bunch of tracks frozen, and each one of those frozen tracks does count as another number. So really we have around 30 to 32 tracks here. Now, when I first started creating this song, I knew I did want to create a pop song, and I definitely knew that I wanted some signature pop-sounding guitars in there. So I went into my sample bank and pulled out a couple of those guitar samples, and I ended up building the entire song around just those 3 loops. And in fact, only 2 of those loops are mostly used, which is in the verses. I only bring in that 3rd guitar loop for the chorus. So when you are making a pop song or a song in any genre, some of the main things to take into account is the arrangement, the BPM, of course the instruments that you use, the chords, and the drum patterns. Now we have a pretty standard arrangement for this song, just a couple of choruses here with the chorus doubled up at the end, and then just a couple verses, verse 1 and verse 2. So nothing too complicated. The song comes in at just around 3 minutes. I essentially started with just these 2 loops here. And I knew that I wanted to bring them in separately, right? So I wanted to start with just the first guitar sound, and then bring in that second guitar sound, and then bring in the third guitar sound for the chorus. And that's pretty common practice in songs. You do want to start out with fewer elements in the beginning, and then slowly and gradually build up more and more elements over time, so you can introduce the listener to new sounds in a meaningful way, and a way that they can really understand. So once I had the guitars in there, I then proceeded to make a drum beat. And of course we had to use our sample pack, so I just started with something simple, which was just this kick and snare that you hear here. Once I had that drum pattern in place, I wanted to add a few more hats, so I added some hats and then some toms. So at this point, I had a pretty good structure for the song, so let's hear that. So immediately I recognized this as being a very summer type of song, a very summer feel. So I wanted to keep that feeling with the rest of the song. I did want a little bit more though in that verse, so for that I wanted some type of pad, and maybe even an arpeggio. And what I ended up doing is actually sort of creating both. Now at this point I was definitely feeling good about the project, but I of course knew that we still needed a bass. So of course I went to one of the bass presets in our brand new sample pack and started playing around and came up with that riff. I wanted a bass riff that was fun and simple. So this is what I came up with. So it was at this point that I decided to start separating the verse from the chorus. So now that I had my verse sounds, I wanted to create something different for the chorus. So the first thing that I did is went in and changed up the drum pattern to make that more of a 4 on the floor. And after that, the guitars just weren't quite doing it for me, so I also wanted to have some chords. So for that, I just opened up a piano and went with those same chords that the guitars were using. So we can hear that now. Now, in addition to the guitar, I also wanted a bit of a counter melody for the chorus to give it more energy. So I looked to a couple of the sounds in our new sample pack, and here's what they sound like. So I actually ended up placing that hook in the beginning and the end of the song. And for the final chorus, I did want something extra to again show off more sounds of the sample pack and add more energy for that final chorus. So for that, I thought a saxophone sounded pretty good, so we added that in here, and let's see what that sounds like. Plus, that saxophone is actually introduced in the final pre-chorus, making that pre-chorus a little bit different and unique from the first one. So once I had the choruses and the verses set, the next thing I did was create the pre-choruses and the bridge. Now, of course, normally you do want to take out most of the sounds, including the drums, but typically you do want to add something new to keep the listener interested and the song nice and fresh. So you can see here for the pre-choruses, we did drop out all of the drums, leaving only the melodies, and only one of the guitar loops. And for that one guitar that we did keep, we actually filtered it down and then filtered it back up. So let's hear what that sounds like. And once we had our pre-choruses and our bridges, it was just then left to add some effects like these risers and these percussion and impact sounds to really let the listener know that they are transitioning from one part of the song to the other. And once we had all of that completed, the final step was to create the intro and the outro. And for the intro, I did want to make it somewhat similar to the pre-chorus, but again, still be unique so the listener knows where they are. You always want to add different sounds in different parts of the song, again, to guide the listener through from the beginning to the end. Here we placed the hook in the beginning of the intro and the hook at the beginning of the end, but the difference is that the intro has a few less sounds than the outro. The outro actually has a couple more sounds. So let's first listen to the intro. So as you can hear there, I did add a riser effect and I added a filter effect to that guitar so that I can filter it in so that it starts quiet and then ends up more loud. And for the outro, I definitely know that I wanted to end this with some type of reverb tail to create a bit of atmosphere and mood. So to do that, we kept the chords and we kept that arpeggio. So let's hear what the outro sounds like. And after that, the song was completed. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this walkthrough and hopefully you learned something. Now, Cubasis 3 actually doesn't come with a chord track or an arrangement track or a BPM track. So as you can tell, we're a little bit early still in the mobile music production, but nevertheless, we can still do a couple workarounds here. So what we actually did is end up creating MIDI regions to create a visual representation of what we need to see here. So let's go ahead and zoom in. We'll zoom in a little bit more. Now, as you can see, we have our chord track here and our arrangement track. They are both MIDI tracks, as we said, with no instrument attached, as is indicated by this X here. Now, for the chord track, this is mostly, again, just visual information. You can, if you want, go ahead and put the same chords that you have here inside of the notepad. But personally, it does help me more visually if I see them laid out here. So as you can see, this is the chords for the main track here, which is C, F, E, and G. They are empty MIDI regions. They don't actually have any chords in them, but they are labeled as such. Now the next track is the arrangement track, and again, another visual representation to help you in your production during the song. So we have our intro here, verse 1, pre-chorus, and then the chorus. And if we zoom out a little bit more, you can see we have our bridge here, and then our verse 2, another pre-chorus, the very final chorus, and then finally an outro. Now, if we zoom back out to be able to see all this at once, you can see that it still does kind of come in pretty handy. If we zoom out fully here, you can see that it is spread out across the entire song. So you can easily go in and figure out what is where. All right, and now let's go ahead and move on to the drums. The drums are in orange here, as you can see, and they are labeled differently. We have the verse drums and then the chorus drums. So first we'll dig into the verse drums and then we'll go into the chorus drums, as they each have their own unique patterns. So let's go ahead and zoom in here to our verse drums. All right, now let's solo these here. We'll solo the toms, kick, snare, and hats. And let's listen to this pattern here before the hats. So as you can see here in our little 2-bar drum loop, there is a little bit of a different pattern versus the first bar from the second bar. So let's play that first bar. One more time. But I wanted a little bit of a different pattern for the second bar to again switch it up and keep the listener guessing a little bit here. So let's listen to this. And one more time. So a little bit different there on the backbeat, and we'll go ahead and play this together one more time. So switching up the drum pattern like this definitely adds more variety for the listener. Now, if we look at the effects applied for these drums, there really isn't nothing special here, just a channel strip and studio EQ, I believe, for the toms, kick, snare, and hats. Yep, just a channel strip and a studio EQ. Now, we are applying a couple of different effects on the drum bus, but we'll get to that in a second. So if we do take a look at our snare track, and we'll double click on the MIDI region, you can see that there is two different sounds here. So the two sounds we have playing in here is both a snare and a clap. So we can listen to the clap here, and then the snare. And so together, they sound like this. And what you'll notice if we zoom in even more in here is that these aren't actually perfectly on beat. So sometimes what producers end up doing is moving these snares or kicks just a little bit to the right. And this gives the pattern a bit more of a human feel. In this case, I both wanted it to sound a little bit more human, and I wanted to get a little bit more of the sound of the snare in there as well. So that when we do move this clap over a little bit, we can get both the clap and the snare sound in there. Now we haven't done this for our kicks, but we have done this for our snares. People do it for kicks as well. Typically, producers place the snares a little bit late and the kicks a little bit early. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to the hats. Let's hear what these hats sound like. All right, sounds good. Let's go ahead and dig into the hats. So if we double tap on the MIDI region here and take a look at the velocity, you can see that we have turned down every other hat, and we've even done some run-ups and run-downs. And again, this really does help give the drum pattern much more of a human feel. Now, as we said, most of the sounds in this song is coming from our brand new sample pack, and that includes all of the drum sounds. So if we take a look and see where these are coming from, we can zoom in. I believe that most of the verse drums is going to be coming from our first drum kit inside of our new sample pack, Pop Kit 1. So the kick and the snare, as well as the hats, are all coming from that Pop Kit 1. Again, one of 5 different drum kits inside of our brand new Essential Sample Pack. And then finally we have the toms here playing at the end of the pattern. Now the toms is actually coming from our Pop Kit 5, which is the 5th drum kit inside of our brand new sample pack. Alright, that's pretty much it for the verse drums. Let's move on to the chorus drums. Alright, now we're taking a look at the chorus drums, and as you can see here, it is a different pattern. It is the standard 4 on the floor pattern. So let's listen to what those sound like. Alright, so that was again a 4 on the floor pattern. We also ended up using different hats for the chorus for the purpose of giving it more energy. Let's take a look at where these drums are coming from. So we have the kick coming from our first drum kit. The hats are coming from our 5th drum kit. We have our first snare coming from the first drum kit here, Pop Kit 1. And finally, we have our second snare coming from Pop Kit 5. For the insert effects, nothing too special. Again, just a channel strip and a studio EQ here for all of these tracks. And now finally, let's just take a look at our drum buses here. So if we scroll down, we can see that we do have a verse drum bus and a chorus drum bus. So under the verse drum bus, looks like we don't have any special effects here under the insert, but for the send effects, we are using a bit of reverb and compressor. We're using some of the reverb here just to give it a little bit more depth, and we are using the compressor to make sure that all the sounds do come together in a fairly even fashion. And for the chorus drum bus, we don't really have anything in here except for a compressor. Again, to even out the signal for all those drums and make them sound like they were recorded in the same room. Now we do have something extra here inside of the chorus, an extra percussion loop. Let's hear what this sounds like. So I didn't exactly want to have any trap hats in the chorus, but I still wanted some kind of movement, some kind of percussive movement. So this sort of ended up filling that sonic gap and added a bunch more rhythm. And that's pretty much it for the chorus drums and all of the drums. Let's move on to the percussion and effects. Alright, here we are taking a look at some of these percussion tracks, and as you can see, we don't really have too many, just 4 different percussion tracks here, and the only sound that actually didn't come from the sample pack is this one right here, the fat snare. The other percussion sounds here, perc 1, 2, and the vocal stab, all came from our brand new Essentials Pack sample pack. And we're not applying too many effects on here, I believe, for the insert effects, so just a channel strip for the snare, and no other insert effects. Oh, a channel strip for the percussion 3, and nothing for the vocal stab. So let's hear these individually real quick. Alright, so all of these stacked together do make an impact type of sound, because I did want to have some kind of big impact before the main chorus. Something to sort of get you amped up and let you know that something big is coming. So individually, any one of these things didn't really cut it, but when you put them together, they do make a pretty interesting sound. So let's hear what that sounds like now. And I do believe we have reverb on almost all of these. So for the fat snare, yes, we have a reverb on the send, as well as the percussion 1, 3, and vocal. Oh, the vocal stab does not have any reverb on it. And that's because the actual source sound here that's coming from the sample pack has plenty of reverb on it already. Now let's take a look at some of these effects here. We'll scroll down a bit. So first we have our riser, then an impact, and then a crash, and then a splash. And all 4 of these sounds, the riser, impact, crash, and splash, are all coming from our brand new free sample pack, Essentials Pack Pop. So let's hear this riser real quick. For the crash 1 here, We have the reverb as well, and the splash, we also have the reverb and the impact as well. And for the insert effects, it looks like just a channel strip on all 4 of these tracks. And here we are with the impact, crash, and splash together. So when you combine all of these 3 together, it does sound pretty cool. So let's hear what that sounds like now. We'll solo these tracks and hit play. All right, very cool. So again, individually, they're all okay, but when you put them together, they make a pretty unique sound. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the 3 main guitar loops of the song, and it's really what the entire song was built around. So let's hear them together, all 3 of them in the chorus. All right, very cool. So we actually only use the first 2 of those in the verses, and we bring in the third one, which is the guitar arp here, for the chorus. As you can hear, they really do have that kind of very poppy sound, which is of course exactly what we're going for in this song. So since I can't actually play guitar very well myself, I do have a lot of guitar loops. And while our sample pack does have a ton of sounds, in fact over 170 sounds, it didn't quite have the guitar loop that I was looking to base a song around. So I just simply dipped into one of my mini sample packs and pulled these out. But virtually every other sound in this entire song is coming from the sample pack. And we don't have too many effects on here, I believe, just a channel strip, studio EQ, and filter, which we use to filter in the sound in and out for the intro and outro. And finally, for the guitar pick, again, just a channel strip, studio EQ, and a filter, so we can filter that in and out. It does look like a couple of these guitar tracks do have send effects though, so let's take a look at that. The guitar rhythm is going to have a reverb, and the guitar pick, again, a reverb. But still pretty minimal effects, as the guitars already sound pretty good. Now we also have another guitar sound in here coming from the sample pack, but we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, now we're going to take a look at some of the synth sounds that we have and our chords. So first here we have a couple of synth tracks that get played in the chorus. These synth sounds basically act as a counter melody to the guitars, and also act as somewhat of a hook as we play the sound in the beginning and the end of the song. So let's hear that first. All right, perfect. So all of these sounds here, the synth stab 1 and 2, are coming from our sample pack. And the chords is actually just a standard piano, I believe, inside of Cubasis. That is the mellow piano preset. But before we do hear those chords, let's hear the doubled up melody here that plays along with that second synth stab. So though this did sound pretty cool, I wanted something else to go along with it. So let's hear what we added with that. So we felt that worked really well with that second sound. Let's hear those 2 together. All right, perfect. So those sounds together is something that we were looking for, because the first sound is going to add the top end that we were looking for, a bit of sheen, and it sounds a bit of like a guitar. And then that second sound is more of a synth sound, giving us a little bit more of the low and middle end. Layering up your sounds is a great way to add additional depth and additional frequency range into your sound. And of course, it also helps make your sounds that much more unique. Now, finally, in here, we just have our chords being played by that standard mellow piano. So let's hear what those chords sound like now. All right, very cool. And let's just take a look at some of the effects that we have in here. So for our synth stabs, we have just a channel strip in Studio EQ. And of course, we are sending a bit of reverb there. For the second one, I believe it's very similar. Channel strip and Studio EQ, and then the reverb as well. And for the chords, though, I think we have a couple of different effects on here. Under the insert effects, we have the channel strip and Studio EQ. But for the send effects, we have a reverb. And once again, that was the mellow grand piano preset inside of Cubasis 3. And remember, folks, that chords is something that's really, really important inside of pop songs. Chords is really one of the main things that actually determines what type of song that you're using. And so for this song, we picked some pretty standard chords, just C, F, E, and G. And you can see those in the MIDI track, as you can see right here. If we double tap, we can see those being played out. Now, normally you probably do want to have more of a complex chords, as these are just pretty standard triads, but we did want to make the song pretty simple overall, as we were limited for time. Next up, we're going to take a look at the final 2 melody tracks of the song, both of which are played with sounds from our brand new sample pack. And the first one is going to be the verse melody. Now this actually comes in the second verse, and this is going to be playing a counter melody to the guitars. And what I wanted to do really first is play that hook when we come right out of the verse into the bridge, and then play a different melody throughout the verse, but using that same sound. So again, first the hook, and then a new melody for that verse. So let's hear what that sounds like. Now, normally I do like to layer that up with something else as well, but that ended up filling out the sound pretty good. The effects that we used on here was basically just the channel strip and studio EQ like usual, but then we also added a long delay. Next up we have our saxophone. If we scroll over here, we do tease that just a little bit in the final pre-chorus, and then we actually end up using it in the second part of the chorus. You can see right here we use it in the entire second part of the chorus. As you can see, we did reduce the clip volume a little bit here to make it a little bit quieter so that it does hit a little bit harder when it finally enters into the chorus. Let's hear what this sounds like. And that's the first part. And then if we go over here, we actually continue that a little bit further for that last part of the main chorus. Alright, now as far as effects that we have on here, pretty standard stuff again, just our channel strip and EQ, and then a reverb after that for the send. So I think this really does goes to show that if you do pick good sounds, you really don't have to end up using very many effects. And now let's take a look at our one and only very lonely arpeggio. So we do have that track right here, and it's basically like a pad as well, sort of like an ARP pad. We actually ended up using a bunch of different effects on this, so we ended up freezing this track. But let's hear what this sounds like first, and then we'll take a look at the effects. Alright, now I actually ended up cutting the last part of this particular audio file off at the end so we can do a reverb throw. Because Cubasis has pretty simplistic routing, only allowing you to route one track to one group at a time, I just simply created a separate track with a separate insert effect. So again, I copied the very last part of the wave file here, pasted it to the bottom, and added some different effects. So let's hear what that sounds like. So very simple, but it does serve a purpose of allowing the song to end with a nice little reverb tail. So if we play that together, we can hear what that sounds like. But let's take a look at some of the effects that are in here now. So if we look here, we can see that the insert effects, we are using, again, channel strip and EQ, but in addition to that, we have our delay, reverb, and stereo width. The delay is what's going to give it really that arpeggio type of feeling. And then of course we have to have a little bit of reverb in there, and the stereo width is going to make the sound more spread out into the stereo spectrum to make it sound like it's more in the background. We first actually ended up introducing this sound in the beginning in the first verse, but we liked the sound a lot, so I actually ended up making it carry all the way through to the very end of the song. So it is in the song all the way from the beginning to the end, but I actually left it out of the chorus so that it can really stay with just the verses, to give the verses a bit of a different sound and make them unique from the chorus. And here we are, last but not least folks, the bass part of the song. So for the bass sound, we again used one of the sounds inside of our brand new Essentials pack. We used the Bass 1 preset. But I actually ended up doubling this up here, so for the second one, we actually used a different preset here, which is the Bass 2 preset. Now the second one I actually don't use very much, I'm pretty much only using the top end of it, because I did want to have a bit of a buzzy sound on top of our standard bass sound. So let's go ahead and hear what the bass sound sounds like first. So I did kind of want a little bit of a funky bass, a little bit of a nice pattern that goes with the drums. But again, that sound wasn't quite enough. I wanted a little bit more of buzz in the high end area, so I added this second part of the sound. Now I have it turned down pretty low here, so before we hear it, we're going to have to turn up the sound a lot here. Alright, now let's hear this. Now it kind of sounds strange by itself, but when you combine the two, here's what we have. Now, one of the secret sauce plugins that we're using in here is a sidechaining app, because a lot of times in pop music, the bass is sidechained to the kick. And not just the bass, some of the main melodies are as well, but in our case for this song, we pretty much only sidechain the bass. So if we take a look at our effects here under the Insert Effects, again standard stuff, channel strip and EQ, but we also have Bleece Sidekick. So if we tap on that, we can see that that is applying our sidechain compression. So we can solo this track and hit play, and let's go ahead and turn it on and off. So a pretty subtle effect, but it really does end up helping the rhythm of the track, adding a bit more bounce and making your head nod just a little bit more. And we also ended up applying the sidechain on the second bass track as well, so we have the Bleece Sidekick on both bass 1 and bass 2. Now in addition to our bass sound there, we actually have a sub bass as well, but that only gets played in the chorus, and that's again to drive more energy to the chorus. So let's hear what that sounds like now. We'll solo that track and hit play. So that is the Vintage Bass preset being played by Cubasis 3's native synthesizer, the Microloog. And not too many effects on here. If we go in here and tap on the Insert Effects, just a channel strip and Studio EQ, and nothing in the Send effects. We were just looking for an overall very warm sub bass that can really give the chorus a little bit of extra punch. Alright, if you guys are still rocking with us, we can't thank you enough for being here. And we especially can't thank the people enough that are watching this video live to help us build out our community. Now we do hope that even if you don't produce any songs under what could be considered the overall pop umbrella, that you were still able to gain some knowledge from this video. In the future, we will be releasing more and more sample packs, so we will definitely make sure to release tutorial videos on how to create songs in each one of those genres. Alright folks, it is that time again for a brand new sample pack contest from MobileMusicPro. This contest did officially start Wednesday, January 13th and will go all the way through Wednesday, January 27th. And just like our previous contest, we would like you to submit a song using as many sounds from our latest sample pack as you can. This time our Essential Sample Pack 2, our Pop Sample Pack. Now this contest is completely free to enter, and the sample pack you'll be using is also completely free, so there's really no excuse not to enter. Because you could be one out of 4 winners, with the grand prize being a brand new MPD 218 16-pad controller. Now to enter this contest, you must submit your song to info@mobilemusicpro.com before midnight on Wednesday, January 27th, as that is the official ending date of this contest. For all the rules, details, and prize information, make sure to check out our website at mobilemusicpro.com/contest. And of course, remember guys, that even if you don't win, we will be hosting a bunch of new contests in the future, so definitely stay tuned to the channel. We did thoroughly enjoy all the submissions from our previous contest, and we can't wait to see what you guys are going to come up with next. So from everybody here at MobileMusicPro, we are wishing you all the best of luck. And as always folks, we always have a ton more content coming your way, so to stay up to date with everything that we're doing, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our free mailing list at MobileMusicPro.com. And that about wraps up the show here folks, so until next time, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. So if you do want to help us out with that mission, make sure to smash the... man, I can't even say make sure. Now to celebrate the release of this brand new... come on. This contest did officially start Wednesday, January 13th and will go through... Now this contest is completely free to enter guys, and the sample pack required...